Today's projects involve checking on all the dormant plants that are stuck all over the place and making sure they are okay, watering some plants outside, if you can believe that, and keeping all those plants safe from the deer. You know what no one ever tells you when you get into gardening? How much you learn to appreciate cold, dark spaces. Because you gotta find one to overwinter all these plants that need cold, dark dormancy. And so that's where we're starting, which is in the weirdest, creepiest cold, dark space in my house, which is our well pump room. This is these little foam insulation boards maintain the temperature in here for me so that I can keep it cold and dark. Come on in. So in this room we have a stack of dahlias, 2 figs, the banana, and then we've got some colocasia down there. Here is the temperature. This is a new thermometer that I got. This one is Wi-Fi. The last one I had was Bluetooth. So this way I can check from my phone when I'm not home, which is nice. I don't for a second believe that 94% humidity in here. I don't see how that's possible. I don't think it's that high, but I came in here and it was, this goes up rapidly when I open up these doors, but 45 is a great temperature for in here. So let's take a look at what we're going to do in here. So the first thing I do is stick my finger in the soil of the figs. It feels moist, so I'm not going to add any water, but probably when I come back to check on these things in about another month, I will end up adding like just a little bit of water, a cup of water, maybe 2 cups of water, not even, probably a cup of water per plant, just so that we keep a little bit of moisture in that soil. As far as the banana and the colocasia go, there's nothing I can do with these plants at this point, really. What's going to happen with them is going to happen. They seem fine. I've poked at them a little bit. Everything seems fine. I don't think we've got like a major slimy rot issue going on, in which case they would just get pitched. So far so good. So the main reason we're in here is to check on the dahlias. I try to do this once a month. This is the first time I'm doing it since I packed them away. So what I'm checking for when I check my dahlias is that everything is feeling firm. I don't check every tuber. I dig my hand in the bottom. I pull out one from the top, or I pull out one from each basket just to make sure. We're looking for firm tubers that are feeling no signs of mushy spots or rot, or any signs of shriveling. And everything, all the tubers feel fabulous. If there's any sign that something is shriveling, I will either use like a misting bottle and mist the medium. I'm not misting the tubers, I'm misting the medium, or I'll actually take the crate over by the sink where I have like a hose end sprayer, and I'll just do a quick pass of the hose end sprayer to spray that medium and kind of mix it up a little bit. I don't worry about it too much. There's enough moisture in there to kind of move it around. So I'm not worried about dryness because right now everything is feeling really, really good. What I am worried about is that the burlap on every basket, almost every basket, is feeling quite damp. So my concern is that that will be too much moisture, and keep in mind that we're keeping these in quite cool temperatures. So cold and damp is not a good mix for almost any plant out there, especially dahlia tubers, which really do not appreciate cold and damp, whether it's when you store them or whether you plant them in the ground. So the plan is all of the plastic bags are coming off. I'm going to leave a plastic bag at the bottom so that none of them are sitting on concrete. Concrete will just suck moisture out of whatever's sitting on top of it. So I'll stack up all the boxes on top of the plastic. I will rearrange the boxes. I do that every time I check them, and I'll restack them, and I'm not going to cover them with the plastic for now, so we can get things to maybe dry out a little bit with that. And I will come back and check again in about 3 weeks. Normally I would do a month. I'll come back in about 3 weeks, just make sure things aren't drying out too much. Just make sure we don't have a problem on our hands. That fig on the outside is Chicago Hardy fig, and it really badly needs repotting this year. Done. Other than the fact that there is no sun, it's actually quite a nice day here, temperature-wise at least. A little breezy. Okay, watering jobs are next. All right, I want you all to know this is very organized in here. It might not look like it to you, but it is. All the tools are hanging up. All the stuff is stacked. It's just a very small room that's doing a lot of work. I've talked about this before, but this part of my garage, this little lean-to attached to our unheated garage, is where I overwinter trees and shrubs that are in containers. Now, the general rule for overwintering plants in containers is that if you're going to leave them out, you want them to be 2 zones hardier than the zone you garden in. So I garden in either a zone 5 or a zone 6. Let's just call it 6 because officially it's a 6. In my brain, we're probably going to continue operating as a 5B, but we are officially a zone 6A now, so I'm going to start calling it that, even though my brain won't do that. So I'm zone 6. I would need these plants to be harder to zone 4. Probably most of these actually are, but in some cases, the pots are not frostproof. Like the pots that I have the boxwood in are not frostproof. And the apples, I think, are too young to be out on their own. And frankly, they're just deer food if they're out there. So I just figured I'd bring them in here. So let me show you. So these are the 4 boxwoods that live in containers in the middle of the circle garden. I bring them in here every year. I think this is year 3 for doing this. And then I also have the 2 columnar apples that I planted. This poor guy actually got nibbled on by deer before it came in. This one is looking much, much better. I left the ground covers that I had planted in there for the winter, just to see if they would overwinter. I don't think they would. Or will, but I thought, what does it matter? Just leave them in there and we'll pull them out in spring and replant with something else if need be. Now, normally at this time of year, the soil in these containers would be frozen, but weird year, not frozen yet. However, it's going to get very, very cold next week. And whether the soil in them is frozen or not, they still need to have a little bit of moisture in the soil. You don't want things to fully dry out. And I actually feel like they probably need more water since the soil hasn't frozen yet. They're probably still some sort of, they're more alive than they normally would be at this time. So I'm going to add a small amount of water. I don't really even want it to be enough to run out the bottom of these pots, but a small amount of water to these just to make sure there's moisture in that soil. You'll note, by the way, that they all sit on more of that foam insulation board. I use that stuff everywhere. But again, you don't want the pot sitting directly on the concrete because what will usually happen is the pots will freeze to the concrete. And then when you lift it up, the bottom of your pot breaks off. Plus, it's a little bit of insulation inside of here for them. So I just put down chunks of this foam board underneath everything. There's one last pot to water, which is something that's still growing out here. What? This is a bay that I bought in my big cartload sale at that nursery, and I had planted it in a pot at the time. I transferred it to this pot for winter and then stuck some hydrangeas around because I thought it was pretty. And this thing is still just going strong. Now it will probably succumb when we have these cold temperatures coming, but I'm going to give it the last little bit of water here and we'll see what it does. You can overwinter bays inside if you choose to, and I do not choose to for a variety of reasons, including that I just don't have room, and also that I don't need it that badly. Now, I'm gonna run over here because I noticed something interesting. We got a little bit of snow yesterday, just a little bit, and the gutter is draining into the rain barrel. Now I've got the rain barrel open because, of course, if you don't have the nozzle open and it fills up, you will break your rain barrel. But I just realized, I'm like, this is great. This is rainwater. So I'm just going to let this guy sit out here and fill up with what runs through the rain barrel. Use that for my indoor plants. I bet they'd love that. So my next job is deer protection. Now, as I mentioned in the tour I put up about a week ago, the deer pressure has not been bad so far this winter, and that's because it's been so warm. I mean, the grass is still kind of green here. There's vegetation out there for the deer to eat, but we're getting snow and cold in the next few days here. That will all change. As soon as stuff is covered up by snow or everything freezes or it gets very cold, deer need more food sources. I would prefer those food sources not come from my garden. For deer repellent, you guys know that for years, and actually what I really rely on summer often has been Messina's Deer Stopper 2. Works well for me, doesn't stink. I also unoccasionally will use Bob-X or Plant Skid, both of which work and do stink. However, spray-on deer repellents are not fun in winter because you gotta cover everything. There's a lot of trudging through snow. It's cold out. It's a pain in the butt. Not my favorite. So this is what I've been trying since fall, actually. This stuff. It's called Deer Scram, and it's a granular. Now this is Deer Scram Professional, and what I found out is that the difference between regular Deer Scram and Professional is that Professional comes in like a 3-gallon or 5-gallon bucket. The other ones don't, so there's no difference. It's just the size you buy it in. And the way this one works, I always like to read how deer repellents work. The way this one works is, hang on, let me get the thing off.
5 hours later.
I always like to read why a deer repellent is supposed to work, what's in it that deer don't like. And in this case, it's meat products. It sounds pretty wretched. Basically, my understanding is that it smells like a dead deer to deer. So they're like, I'm not going there. Somebody died there. So here's what this stuff looks like. It's quite sort of fine and dusty. There's also, you know, blood meal and stuff in here too. I've been playing around with how to apply this stuff. I was just kind of tossing it around, actually using my scoop and then sort of tossing around, but I wasn't getting the coverage that, like, this is supposed to cover. How much does this cover? Does it say? What I'm trying now to get better coverage and like the promised coverage with this is I'm putting it in a seed spreader. And we're gonna try that. Now the way you apply this is you're supposed to leave like you make a barrier around the area, and you do like 18 inches from what you're trying to protect, and then you make a thick barrier. But what I'm gonna do in where I'm mostly applying this, which is along where we planted the new trees, there I'm gonna just cover the whole area. I'm gonna go the other way because the wind's just blowing it right back on top of me. So the package says that normal rainfall enhances the product, the effect of it, and you can use it underneath snow. So I think this is actually like the perfect product for winter. My deer repellent philosophy is different in winter than it is in summer. So my goal in summer is to make the entire garden, spring, summer, fall, make the entire garden smell terrible so that they aren't interested in any of it. They just know everything in that garden tastes terrible. We're not going in there. In winter, because it's a little bit of a pain to spread deal with deer repellent in winter, I focus on protecting new plants, plants that they are particularly likely to cause damage to, generally woody plants. Woody plants, you know, just can't deal with a lot of what a deer can do to them, and they don't bounce back very well. Herbaceous perennials, well, they're dead anyway, right? So while I don't like the idea that the deer have figured out that my garden can be a buffet, by the same token, they're not going to do a lot of lasting damage. The next stop is up here on the bulb lawn. Now, I have been using Repellzol on the bulb lawn since I planted it. I happen to be out of it now, so I'm going to use some of this. The Repellzol is probably still working, but I'm going to use some of this. I'm assuming that, I guess I don't know for sure. I'm assuming that this product works at least somewhat for smaller critters other than deer. Repellzol does work for everything. I'm assuming this will have an effect on other critters. Mostly I'm worried about squirrels here. Here's some big deer hoof prints right here on the mound. You can see the little hoof outline there because the ground's not frozen here. Oh, in fact, look at this, you guys. Holy smokes. So this is in a little hoof print. I hope you can see this. This is a bulb coming up. Oh, is that wild? We're gonna cover that up a little bit because that just got unearthed because the deer were walking through here. It's always a little alarming when you see things happening in your garden that you know shouldn't be happening, like bulbs popping up. But by the same token, it's not the least bit surprising to me that that's happening. I mean, listen, Mother Nature's gonna do what Mother Nature's gonna do, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. So it goes on my list of things that I don't worry about. All right, the last place I'm gonna put some of this is where I planted a bunch of new hydrangeas last year. It's right along the creek here. And not so much in winter, but certainly in spring, the deer will often walk through the creek just along there and just like nibble on their way. So I like to protect this area, especially since there's generally newly planted stuff there. Here's a bonus of applying deer repellent in January. You guys see what I just saw in the garden that I never would have noticed otherwise. Do you remember the stinking hellebores, the Helleborus fetidus, great botanical name, that I planted in fall that I bought from another gardener in town on Facebook Marketplace? Look at them. They're looking fabulous. I'm pretty impressed. By the way, here's my Mahonia hanging in there. Planted I don't know how many years ago after I lost a bet with Laura at Garden Answer. So I've been using this deer scram since fall sometime, but I've been using it in conjunction with Repel-Sol and with Bobex and Messina's Deer Stopper 2. So I can't tell you if it's working or not. Several professional garden designers and landscapers who I know use it. That's their preferred method. I think it's partly because it's so easy to apply and it lasts for quite a long time. I think it says a month on there before you have to reapply. I will say it's quite expensive. That bucket, which is 25 pounds, was $120. Now granted, I started adding up what I spend on deer repellent in a given year. I think it's probably $700 or $800, which is huge. It's crazy when you add it up. But it is the price of gardening where I garden. I certainly have lost more than $800 in plants to deer over the years, many times that to deer. And it wasn't until maybe 5 years ago or so, maybe even less, that I got really serious about really staying on top of the deer repellent, because I got really sick of wasting my money on plants that were getting eaten by deer. Short of putting up a deer fence, which obviously is the perfect thing to do if you can do that in your situation, which we can't, so that doesn't work. Obviously that would be more, but I'm sure over the long haul you save way more money and it's off your mind. But short of putting up a deer fence, which is not an option for us, although obviously if you can do it, it's great. What are you gonna do? Well, say what you will about garden jobs in winter being a little bit boring, but it's nice to have garden jobs. Nice to have an excuse to do something, right? All right, let's put a lid on that video. See what I did there? Hey, thanks for watching. That's it for me. Oh, look, it's full.